Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of real estate tutorial videos. Today, we're going to take a look at Texas lease forms and addenda. We're not going to look at an actual lease. That's another episode. We're just going to look at the forms and addenda that go with the lease. So our first form today is going to be the agreement between brokers for residential leases. This is if there's two agents involved, one representing the tenant, one representing the landlord. Because there's no title company involved, normally when you go to a closing, the title company pays everybody and cuts the checks. But since there's no title company involved with a lease, there's the two brokers. So in order to get paid in a lease transaction, you need to use this form. So the buyer's agent or the agent representing the tenant would complete this form. They would put the address to the property, the name of the landlord, and the name of the tenants. And then they would type in the fee that had been agreed upon. So normally there would be a fee in the MLS. That may change in 2024 because we're not allowed, we probably won't be able to advertise them in the MLS. But if there is going to be some type of co-op commission to the buyer's agent, that agent could contact the listing agent and say, hey, are you paying a fee? And in this case, it's 50% of 1 month's rent. Normally when it's very, let's put it this way, it's very common when a listing agent takes a lease listing that they charge 1 full month's rent as the fee for putting the, marketing that listing and putting it on the MLS. So they're going to split that fee in this case with a buyer's agent, and that buyer's agent would get 50% of a full month's rent. So here you can see they check box A and put 50%. Now, if it was not 50%, let's say it was a flat fee, they could have checked box 3 and put the flat fee amount there. Box 2 would have said a percentage of all rent that the tenant is obligated and on commission. That's very unlikely. Let's put it this way. I've never even seen it happen that way. So it's usually going to be A1 or A3. Paragraph B, other fees. If they're offering some type of additional commission, if the tenant renews the lease down the road, in a year or so, those fees could be added in here. That's not typical though. Also, if there's a sale involved, if the tenant ends up buying the property at the end of the lease or during the lease, would the buyer's agent be given a commission at that point? That usually the answer is going to be no there. But anything can be negotiated. So if there was going to be some type of commission, that would be added in here in B2. Then at this point, the buyer's agent or tenant's agent would fill in their information here. It says other broker, and you can see we have Red Balloon Realty and their license number, the name of that agent, Valerie Jones, and their address and contact information. And then over here on the right side would be the listing company, Edo Realty, Gina Ramos, and the address and phone number there. So on the right-hand side is the listing broker or listing agent, and the left is the buyer or tenant's agent. You'll notice also at the bottom of this form, it says submit IRS form W-9 to the listing broker for payment of fee. Typically, when you get paid, the listing broker is going to be the one that pays your broker. Remember, as an agent, you cannot get paid directly from another agency. You can't get paid from the title company directly unless your broker gives a commission disbursement authorization. But on leases, the payment goes directly to your broker, and then your broker would have to pay you after your commission split has been taken out. So in this case, in order for me as a broker to pay your broker, I need to know who I'm paying, and I need their address, etc. But I also need a W-9, which is an IRS form, because at the end of the year, I'm going to have to send them a 1099 and report the income to the IRS. So this is a little different than what you normally do with the closings on sales. Leases have to have a W-9 because you're being paid directly from broker to broker. All right. The next document is going to be the Texas Realtors residential lease application. And by the way, these are all Texas Realtor forms because TREC does not promulgate these forms. There's no TREC lease. There's no TREC lease application or any of these. So the next one is the residential lease application. This is the standard form that pretty much everybody uses. And it's a 4-page document that the tenant is going to fill out when they are applying to lease a property that has been listed for lease. And so you'll have the property address, when they want to move in, what the monthly rent is, and all that information will be in the MLS, by the way. What is there a security deposit involved in this case? Yes, $2,000. And how long do they want the lease? So the initial one would be 12 months. If they renewed, it could be a different time period, but right now we're asking for a 12-month lease. Property condition, the applicant has viewed the property or has not viewed the property. Sometimes with rental properties, they're so competitive that people will apply and never even haven't seen them yet, except for the photos on the internet, and they'll just take what they can get. So we need to know whether they have actually toured it or not. So in case there's, some dispute down the road. Also, if they have something that they want to make sure that is in the lease, like something taken care of before they move in. For this one, for example, says, have the home professionally cleaned prior to move-in. Have the lawn mowed and edged prior to move-in. That you would think that that's an expectation and it would automatically happen, but it doesn't. I've seen plenty of leases where the landlord's like, hey, you're lucky I picked you. You can mow your own lawn, and I'm not fixing anything. So I don't think that's the way you do business, but so it's probably a good idea to write those things in to make sure that they get done and don't just assume that the landlord is going to take care of those. Okay, so if the tenant has an agent, and they would put that information here where it says applicant was referred to landlord by. So in this case, they have a real estate agent. Her name is Valerie Jones, and her contact information there. If there is no agent, they can check one of these other things on how they found this listing. But I'll say this, if they don't have an agent, who's filling this form out? Because these forms are not available to the public. These are trademarked, copyrighted forms through Texas Realtors. Okay, so we're going to list here in the middle of this document the names of the applicants. So by the way, each applicant has to fill out one of these applications. There's going to be other people's names on it, but each applicant has to fill out the form for themselves. Okay, so here, this one's going to be Bryce Barton. And is there a co-applicant? Yes. So somebody's going to be joining in with them. And you can see down here that his wife, Bianca Barton, is also going to be turning one of these in. Anybody age 18 or older has to fill one of these out. You can't just say, well, I'm going to be the one paying, so I'm the only one that's going to fill one out. No, anybody 18 or older has to fill one out because we have to do a background and credit check on everybody 18 or older. And we're going to need this information and permission. All right, so Bryce has filled this out. He's got his email, his mobile number, date of birth, height, weight, hair color, eye color, whether he's married or not, etc. Now, you'll also see Social Security number here. This is a very dangerous form because once this has been filled out, this has everything that someone would need to steal somebody's identity. I mean, everything. So as an agent, you have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that this information is protected. And you don't just, lay this on the seat of your car as you're going to Walmart so that somebody can, walk by and look inside your window and go, oh, look at that, and take a screenshot off on their phone and then go, steal their identity. So be very careful with this document. And it's probably a good idea to shred it after you're done. I usually at the end of the month, I burn all the documents that have sensitive information because I've already scanned them and saved them to my server. All right, so on this one, we also have to have an emergency contact. So who is Bryce going to use as an emergency contact? We usually ask them to put somebody that's not going to be living in the house. So like a relative, in this case, it's going to be his mother, Francine Barton, and her contact information. And then you add all the other people who are going to be living in the house. So Bryce is going to have his wife, Bianca, living with him, and his daughter, Ariel. And then you put their ages out here. That way, if the landlord goes over to the house because there's something that's broken or needs to be checked on, or there's a pipe broke, whatever, and they get there, they know kind of what to expect. They know there should be three people there. They know that one of them is named Bryce, one of them is named Bianca, and one of them is named, Ariel. And so, but if they get there and there's 8 people living in the house, then something's wrong. Those people are in a breach of the lease because only 3 people should be living in this house, according to this application. All right, so the Bryce is also going to put his current address where he's living. And so you can see the address there, on Spencer Highway in apartment 156. And the landlord or property manager that he answers to right now. So that's how you can get a hold of them to verify that they were good tenants at the previous place. Okay, the next page would include if they had a previous address before that. So we won't really want the last 2 addresses they've lived at, so we can check and make sure that they were good tenants at both places. If they don't have a 2 addresses, like, they're only 19 or 20 years old and, they were still living at home, well, then you don't have to fill that part out. Applicant's current employer. So here Bryce has put Acme Chemical in Deer Park and how much he's bringing in. Now, of course, we're going to find out whether he's telling the truth once we run his credit report and get his pay stubs. But this is just basically his application saying, hey, this is what I make. I know you're going to check on me, but I'm being upfront and honest with you. It's one way also to tell whether a tenant is being honest. I would rather have a tenant be honest with me and not be the greatest applicant on paper, but at least I know they're honest. I will be much more likely to accept them as a tenant than a tenant that has lied on the application. So what if they make a lot of money? They're a liar. I'm sorry about my dog again. Okay, so here, if you had a previous employer, he would put the other employer there. This is so that the property manager or the landlord can call and verify employment. Okay, so any vehicles that are going to be on the property would be listed here. So Bryce has a truck, well, either Bryce or Bianca. They have a truck, a 2020 Ford F-150, and the license plate. And then they have a car, 2021 Hyundai Santa Fe. They also have a dog. So if you have any animals that you're going to want to have in the home, you need to list them here. So they have a dog, a Jack Russell. The dog's name is Shasta. He's black, white, and tan, 35 pounds, 6-year-old male. He is neutered, has no bite history, does have his shots, and he is not an assistance animal. So this is how we can tell whether there's a service animal or an emotional support animal, or if it's just a pet. And that's going to be verified. I can tell you that the company that I use to verify is called petscreening.com. And if somebody says they have a service animal, petscreening.com will verify whether it is indeed a service animal or they're lying about it. Okay, also, they're going to answer these questions here in these check boxes. Are there going to be any water beds? I don't even know if you can find any of those anymore. Anybody on the property smoke? That's a big no-no. Are you gonna have renter's insurance? Are you in the military? That makes a difference because you might get called to active duty and then, then you can walk out on the lease. All right, all these other ones, have you ever been evicted? Bankruptcy, have you ever been convicted of a crime? Are you a registered sex offender? We're gonna find all this out when we run your credit and background check anyway. So this is where we can tell if you're lying or not. Also, if there are any application fees with this, most real estate brokerages and just regular people that are landlords, we all use pretty much the same company. It's called mysmartmove.com. And you put the address to the lease property in there, and then you enter the applicant's name and email address, and then it emails the MySmartMove emails the applicant, and then the applicant goes on and pays the fee. I think it's $45. And then it runs the background and credit check, and then it forwards that information to you as the landlord or as the property manager. So you get their credit report and all that stuff. So you can make an intelligent decision on whether you want to accept this tenant or not. Of course, Bryce wouldn't need to sign here, giving us, saying that he is agreeing with everything on this application, and he is not, told an untruth. All right, next, page 4 is the authorization for us to actually run the credit. So they're authorizing us as the property manager, or they're authorizing the landlord to be able to get their financial and credit and background information. So they need to sign this to authorize us to be able to do that. All right, so there's the 4 pages on the application. Again, every person that's going to be applying to live in the home that's over the age of 18 or 18 or older would need to fill one of these out. All right, the next form is called the animal agreement. It used to be called the pet agreement. Now we call it the animal agreement because service animals are not called pets. So in this case, you're going to list all the animals that you want to bring into the home. In this case, they only have one dog, because some rental properties, they don't allow pets, period. So if you have one, then, the answer is no, we're not going to allow it. Some will do it on a case-by-case basis, like small dogs or cats, things like that. Pit bulls usually is an automatic no. And if you're a pit bull lover, I'm sorry, but insurance won't cover the cost of it because of the reputation of the animals and the liability on the landlord and the insurance company. So if you have a dog and a cat, you would list the dog here and the cat here, and as many animals as you have. Also, you will check the box whether they are an assistance animal or not. So if you claim that they are an assistance animal, we're going to run a check on that through petscreening.com. And if petscreening.com cannot verify that it is indeed a service animal, then you can be denied. However, if petscreening.com comes back and goes, yes, we have verification that this dog is indeed a service animal, a trained service animal, then even if we don't allow pets, we have to accept that dog because it is not considered a pet. It's considered basically a person because it's a trained animal that provides a service for its owner, like a seeing eye dog or somebody that's deaf, or somebody that has had some type of trauma, and the dog is, these dogs are highly trained. Usually it's fairly easy to tell whether it really is a service animal or not by its behavior. But you can't just look at a dog and go, oh, there's no way that's a service animal. You have to get it verified And we use the company to do that. That way we don't get in trouble for violating the Americans with Disabilities Act. Okay, next, if it is a pet, the landlord is allowed to charge a pet deposit in addition to a security deposit on the home. So here, the example is the pet deposit is going to be $250. So a lot of places will charge like $250 per pet, or some places will charge $500 per pet. And it can either be a one-time fee that's refundable, it can be a one-time fee that's non-refundable, or it could be a monthly fee that they add on each month, like $25 a month, as long as you have a pet in the house. So section B gives you those different options on how to, charge an additional fee for a pet. Cannot charge a deposit or a fee for a service animal, though. All right, this goes over some of the rules, about keeping the dog, keeping them up with shots and making sure that they're, on a leash and, they're not tearing stuff up. If the landlord needs to get into the home, the tenant has to, put the dog away so that the landlord is not, bothered or harassed or threatened by the animal. Also, if the dog does have any propensity to be aggressive, if it's ever bitten anybody, or any type of, aggressive behavior, that has to be disclosed here. And again, if you lie and then we find out later on that the dog's bitten 3 other people and you just didn't want us to know about it, well, that's a breach of the lease. You lied on the document, they could terminate the lease. So basically that's page 2. And again, you have to initial the bottom of each page. Then we go to page 3, that's the signatures. So the landlord would sign here on the left. Also, if the property is being managed by a property manager, the property manager can sign on behalf of the landlord. So either the landlord or the property manager has to sign here on the left. The tenants would have to sign and date here on the right. And that would execute this document. So you cannot have a pet or an animal of any kind in a lease property without this document. And if you do have an animal in the home without this document, it's an automatic breach of the lease and grounds for termination and eviction. Okay, this document is rather lengthy, but it's very important. This is called the Residential Lease Inventory and Condition Form. When the tenant has been accepted to the lease and they're moving in, you're going to get a blank copy of this form. It looks exactly like this. It'll have the address to the property on there. And then usually you get like 7 days to turn this in. There's no timeline on it, but the lease will tell you how many days. I will tell you that 7 is the norm. So the tenant will be given this form and they'll have usually 7 days to complete everything in the left-hand column under where it says move-in comments. So the move-in comments are for the tenant to fill out after they move in. So they're going to go through the entire house and fill in line by line by line the condition of everything. Is the mailbox in good shape? Does it have a hole in it? Has it been smashed? Does it open and close? So if there's anything wrong with the mailbox, the tenant needs to notify, make note of that on this document. So basically the tenant has to put, if there's anything wrong with anything in the house, and you do that by noting it on this form. And the reason for that is because when the lease is over and the tenant moves out, the landlord or the property manager is going to take this form out again, and they're going to go back and do a walkthrough and inspect the property after you move out. And if it doesn't match, if the mailbox was fine when you moved in and now it's not fine, well, then the landlord or the property manager can charge you for the damages. So this is how the landlord can keep part of your deposit if you've damaged the property while you lived in it. Now, it's got to be above normal wear and tear, so it has to be, something noticeable that wasn't there before, that wouldn't have happened just from anybody being there. You like holes in the wall or cigarette burns in the carpet, or kids writing with Sharpies on the bedroom wall. That's not normal wear and tear. It may be normal in your house, but it's not normal for anybody else. So those would be grounds for the part of the security deposit, part or all of the security deposit, to be withheld at the end. So that's why you have a security deposit, to make sure that the tenant doesn't damage the property while they're living in it. So there's 6 pages of this. I'm not going to read through every bit of it. You can it's really self-explanatory. You just go through here and you check everything on here. Hey, like window latches. Do the window latches work? Are they all there? I mean, technically, the Texas Property Code says every window must have a working latch. Otherwise, the property is out of code. So that's a problem for the landlord. So if the tenant notifies you that there's a window that doesn't have a latch, well, the landlord better fix it, and they better fix it right away. Otherwise, the landlord is in breach. So that's why we need this form. Again, usually the tenant is given 7 days to complete all the stuff here on the left-hand column. I will tell you that most people are just really lazy and don't want to do it, and they'll just put check marks and say okay, across the thing and say, yeah, it's good, it's good. And then when they move out, they wonder why, they got billed for stuff. They go, oh, well, it was like that when I moved in. Well, not according to the inventory and condition form. You said everything was okay. So stress to your tenant, if you're representing the tenant, make sure they take the time and fill this out correctly. Okay, at the end, the tenant will sign it, and it will be held on to for, until the lease is over. And then when the lease is over, again, we'll take this form out, we'll fill in the right-hand column, and then we'll make sure that they returned all the keys they were given, any garage door openers, et cetera, et cetera. All right. The next form is called key box authorization by tenant. Normally, when a lease is getting ready to expire and the tenant has notified the landlord that, hey, we're not going to renew, we're going to go ahead and move out on, June 30th. The landlord can present this to the tenant and say, hey, since you're moving out, we need to start showing the home to, new tenants that may be interested. So we're going to start showing the house. So you're going to put a lockbox on the door, and you're going to relist it for lease, and potential tenants are going to come tour it. Well, a lot of current tenants, they don't like that idea. They're like, well, wait, I don't want people coming in here. We're paying rent to live here. We don't want just anybody walking through here. Well, that may be true, but it's not your house. And part of the agreement is that, you remember when you got ready to rent the house and you got to come in and look at it 3 weeks before you rented it, and somebody else was living there, you didn't have a problem looking at it with the other tenants. Now you don't want anybody else to come in because it's an inconvenience for you. Well, this authorizes the landlord to put a lockbox on and start showing it. If the tenant refuses to agree to this, there's a section in the lease itself that is a penalty to the tenant. And sometimes it's $500. It could be as much as a full month's rent that the tenant would have to pay as a penalty for not allowing people coming in to see the home. Because remember, if they're not going to let people in there, then it's going to take a lot longer to find new tenants when they leave. That costs the owner money. And so if you're going to cost the owner money, it's going to cost you money. as the tenant. All right, the next form is tenant and occupant information. This basically is a form where we can get everybody's name all on one sheet. That way, instead of pulling out the lease and fumbling through it to try to find everybody's name and age and all that, it's all just on one piece of paper, the contact information. I don't normally use this form a lot. The lease is good enough for me because it does have everybody's name. The lease application has all that information. So, some people use this, some people don't. Again, it's just another thing that has a lot of personal information on it. I don't really want the liability of having this stuff laying around. Also, if there's somebody that's going to be living in the property, like temporarily or something, we can always add them to the lease later. I had a guy that rented a property from me, and he was there about 7, 8 months, and then he got a girlfriend, and the things went well, and so about 9 months in, she wanted to move in with him, and he only had 3 months on the lease, but he was going to renew. So we had her fill out an application, and we added her to the lease with a lease addendum. So that's we just want to make sure that we know who's in the house and we have their contact information. If we need to, either get a hold of them, or if they disappear in the middle of the night and they owe us money. Again, here's more information about this is just like the application with the pets and stuff like that. Again, I don't really use this form that often because it's the same thing as the application. I don't need them to repeat all that information. But it is one of the forms that's available, and some people use it, some don't. All right, next one is called early termination of residential lease. If for some reason the tenant needs to end the lease early, there are some legal remedies where the tenant is allowed to do this. Military service is one thing. Domestic violence is one. Sexual assault is one. Child abuse is one. So if any of those things happen, it is possible for the tenant to get out. But they do need actual evidence of that. They can't just say, "Oh, well, my boyfriend beat me up." Well, okay, that's terrible. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm going to need a copy of the police report to go ahead and release you from the lease. Oh, what do you mean? I didn't file a report. Well, if you didn't file a report, then I can't prove that it happened. And I know that sounds harsh, but this is a business. And there's a lot of people that try to, get out of a lease by saying something happened and it didn't really happen. So I hate to be like that, but again, there's people who will try to play the system, and but the bottom line is you got to play by the rules. So if you want to use that as an excuse, then you have to have the documentation so that we can let you out. If you get called to active military duty, that's another out. We just need a copy of that military form. I don't remember, it's a DD something, but we need something from the military. You can't just say, "Oh, I got called to duty." Well, how do I know that? So also, if a person just wants to end the lease early because, I had one where the couple broke up. They were going through a divorce and they didn't want to live together anymore. Neither one of them wanted to stay in the house. So we just terminated the lease and charged them a penalty of 1 month for breaking the lease. And we just moved on. So anything can be negotiated. So here you can see, we said, before you leave, you're going to have it professionally cleaned, etc. All right, next one, extension of residential lease. Now, this one gets used quite frequently. This is if a tenant has been in the property, let's say, 11 months, and it's a 12-month lease. So, we're gonna go, hey, just reminding you, your lease ends next month. What do you want to do? Do you plan on moving out? Because even though the lease ends, they still have to give you notice. If they don't give you notice, the lease automatically reverts to a month-to-month lease. Now, a lot of people don't know that either. In Texas, the lease automatically rolls over to month-to-month unless the tenant or the landlord gave 30 days notice, or notice period, 30 to 60 days. So a lot of tenants will say, yeah, well, I'm not ready to move out. I like it here. Can I sign another 12-month lease? Well, you don't have to go fill out another, 15-page lease. You can just fill out the one-page extension of the residential lease, which basically says, hey, we're going to extend the expiration date to 2025 instead of 2024. So that's how you would do that, by using a one-page. It's just basically an amendment to the lease. So, but it's used to extend the lease. Also, if we're going to change the rent, because remember, when the lease expires, the landlord's allowed to change the rent at that time. So you can change the rent here as well. And you can also like add or remove somebody from the lease on this form as well. If you offer them to extend the lease, they do have to respond to this form within a certain time frame, and they can't wait till the day before the lease expires and go, hey, you know what? I changed my mind. I don't want to stay. So usually you give this to them like about 5 or 6 weeks before the lease expires, and say, hey, I need this back within a week. You got 7 days to think about this. And that way we know whether they're staying or not. And so, of course, the landlord's going to sign and the tenants are going to sign, and we have an extension of the lease. All right, a lease amendment concerning tenant change. Here you can add or remove somebody from the lease by using this form. There's other ways to do that as well, but this is the actual form, just if you're going to change somebody's name. So, here we have Bianca Barton is going to stay, but you don't see Bruce Barton's name there anymore. So apparently he's not going to be there anymore. I'm going to guess they're going through a divorce, or they broke up or something. So we would need something in writing to verify that so-and-so is not going to be there anymore, but so-and-so is going to be there. All right, and then they would sign here. Here's a residential lease amendment. This is if you're going to change, several things. You'll notice that a lot of the lease addendums and amendments and stuff are repetitive, and you can use one form to do one thing, and you can use another form to do the exact same thing. So there are certain forms that some landlords like to use this and not another one, or some people like the other one and not this one. But I use the amendment frequently. So if you're going to change the rent, you can check box A. If you're going to change the security deposit or make an additional security deposit, you could put B. If the people on the lease are going to change, you can check box C and put the new names or remove one. If they if they had somebody else move in and the original lease said they can only have 2 cars on the property, but now they need 3, you could change that here in D. And then basically we have to make sure that everybody gets a copy of this. And if there's going to be any fee for this change, you could put that down here in G. And then of course everybody will sign it. And now we have an amendment to the lease and when it's going to go into effect. All right, addendum regarding lead-based paint. Just like if you're buying a home that was built prior to 1978, you have to have a lead-based paint addendum. Well, the same thing goes if you're leasing a home that was built prior to 1978. So this is a different lead-based paint addendum. It looks very similar to the other one, but this one is used specifically for leases, and the other one is used specifically for sales. Because this one actually says landlord and tenant. The other one says buyer and seller. All right. And oh, that's all the forms. So that's going to end our quick tutorial on lease forms and addenda in Texas. If you need to refer to the lease, we do have a video tutorial on the standard Texas lease as well. Thanks for joining.